Hi, everybody. Today we are joined by my partner, Debbie Stanley with ETP Canada, and a special guest, Dana Gidge with RLB. Dana is a HR consultant with RLB, working with local businesses as well as within RLB. These videos in this series are meant to enlighten some of the community to what other businesses are doing right now to help move themselves forward. We're looking to speak to businesses who have a message to share about what they've been doing, adaptations they've had to make to still be working, and also to get some insight into what they do professionally and answer some questions. They're definitely out there in the space right now. So Dana, maybe you could just kind of explain a bit about RLB and what you guys do there.
So RLB is one of the largest public accounting firms in the Guelph. We have several offices actually, Guelph, Orangeville, Fergus, Kitchener. So certainly we have about 120 employees in all offices, and public accounting is really our main business there. We also do business consulting. That's kind of where I come into play. I consult in HR for a lot of our client work, and even if they're not clients of ours, I can certainly consult in HR in that field as well.
Okay, great. So obviously RLB is a pretty large company in terms of employees. Since this COVID-19 has started and kind of the progression of it, what has RLB been doing and kind of what's the status quo now of how you guys are operating?
We certainly had a phase-in plan. We had to meet with our senior management team, not knowing what was going to happen. We put phase one of the plan in place, where we did increase clean our common areas, our coffee stations, our boardrooms, our lunch rooms, our meeting rooms. Certainly we meet with clients on a regular basis, so it was certainly a very public area. So we want to not only keep our frontline staff, like our receptionists, safe and content there to be able to work, but also to be able to keep our clients and the community that comes in to be safe as well. So certainly increasing cleaning. We did that at least 3 times a day. That was our phase one type plan, and we all our phase two ended up being pretty fast. What we ended up doing is going fully remote. So our entire team in all of our offices are now completely remote. So what you will see is we did have to put some accommodations in place with regards to people wanting to drop off tax files. So we do have one person in the office that there is a drop box. They drop off their taxes. That person takes them with gloves, puts them into a quarantine area for 48 hours. And then what we do is each second day, remove them so that we test them. So certainly there's been a lot of adjustment for us. Some people, we did have a flexible work from home policy in place prior to this coming into effect. So that certainly did help us. Certainly a scramble for certain things like getting accommodation for screens and keyboards, setting up people's own home offices as well. But all in all, we already had Zoom, so that tool was already in place.
Cool. And you had mentioned also that working with some of the local companies, you have some insight into what they're doing as well to kind of manage this.
Yeah, so certainly not every company can work fully remote. That would be a great idea if we all could, but there's certainly some essential services. Manufacturing certainly was deemed essential services this week. I know we work with a food company that does a lot of the PC brand foods, and they have had to put lots of different parameters in place. My husband alone, I know he works for a huge bearing company. They've put things into place like having their morning meetings done more through teleconference with the staff, so they don't have to do that, and in smaller groups. They've also put their simple, like their time clock. They used to have finger swipe, so you can't have finger swipes because everyone's touching the same screen.
Right.
So they certainly changed that to a card swipe. They also put in markers on the floor so that everyone they're lining up for the time clocks would stay a certain distance behind one another. They altered their lunch schedule so that there's not as many people in the lunchroom at the same time. So some simple, really easy suggestions, but really just kind of look at your floor plan, see where everybody's going to be in the common areas, and put some measures in place so that they're all not there at once. And certainly amp up your cleaning measures as well.
Great.
That sounds great. Now, Dana, historically, EI was always for an employee who has left a business due to illness or sickness or mat leave. But what happens for those Canadian citizens that do not qualify for the traditional EI? Are there measures in place for them?
Yeah, so certainly there are still a lot of employees that will qualify for the traditional EI route. Certainly if they are sick because COVID-19, they can apply for EI sick benefits. We do know that the Canadian government is waiving that 1 week waiting period for sick and quarantine patients that are required to quarantine for different reasons. The traditional short work, which a lot of businesses are experiencing right now, they haven't officially waived 1 week waiting period. We don't know what that will be, but certainly if they are laid off to a short work, they can apply the traditional route. Now, we did notice a few days ago there were benefits that came down. That's kind of been consolidated into one benefit as of today's announcement. That's the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, and that is particularly for people who don't qualify through the normal EI route. This would be for people that certainly are taking care of sick people that in their family members, or sick children, or that are mandatorily going to have to be quarantined, as well as any self-employed businesses that just have a turn down and just don't have the work anymore. So certainly those people normally wouldn't be the ones that are paying into EI benefits, so they wouldn't qualify more traditional route.
That's great. Now, with COVID-19 spreading throughout the community, what would an employer do if an employee came into work and explained that they have been in contact with COVID-19? What would happen in that case?
Certainly, we as employers, we have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. And one of the things that we look at is the one-to-one contact. So certainly if someone comes in and said, the easy route is I was traveling over March break, I came back and I've traveled internationally, now I'm being mandated to self-quarantine. That's the easy route. Let them go self-quarantine. You can do a record of employment and they can try to get the benefits we talked about earlier. The harder ones come into effect where we had one last week where it was someone who had lunch with someone who now tested positive for COVID-19, but they had lunch a week ago. Do we self-quarantine them in that work environment or not? So really you got to kind of look at it and what is one-to-one contact. You certainly can have them call public health and ask them if they think they should be self-quarantined. But certainly if you use your sensibility and say, what is the one-to-one contact this person had? If it was over a week and a half ago, and they are not showing symptoms, it's just a brief encounter, they may not have to stay away from the business. If it was certainly their spouse or someone that they have a lot of high contact with, then of course that person would probably want to go on a leave and do some self-quarantine. So I think you got to look on it a one-to-one basis and what the one-to-one contact they've had with those people.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah, those are great answers, and I think there's a lot of people out there right now obviously wondering about these things. Just spoke to a client of ours myself who is in one of these deemed essential businesses, but has an underlying health condition where she's not really comfortable going to work, right? So there's a lot of interlying issues out there for people. What's the best resource for someone who's trying to figure out if their case meets the standard?
Certainly you want to, again, look at it on a one-to-one basis. There are some guidance through the canada.ca website, but again, that can be a little bit vague.
Yeah.
Certainly you want to look at if on a self-quarantine, we're getting a lot of, even from other employers, questions of, this person's calling in with their parent aging, they're asking for leave of absence or self-quarantine time. So certainly you can extend that leave of absence for them. You can do a record of employment, do the leave of absence. They can apply the traditional route through EI, but they also think that they're a caretaker of this person. They can also qualify for that Canadian emergency response relief. So there are options out there. There's a lot of people that have certainly care for children. The children are off school right now. Daycares are closed, and if they just can't work from home with young children and have to stop work for that reason, they can also apply through that benefit. So lots of leave of absences. I'll talk about work refusals. So some people are a little bit confused about a work refusal and I just want time off to quarantine. Mm-hmm. In a true work refusal, if they say I'm not coming in because I believe my work environment is unsafe, then as an employer, you do have the obligation to do an investigation. Let them know what you've put in place to make that environment safe for them. And if they still refuse to come back because they feel the environment is unsafe, then normally you would follow the proper work refusal procedures. Which unfortunately, if they still refuse to come in, then it could mean having the Ministry of Labor come in and do an inspection. So certainly talk to the employee, have a candid conversation, have those difficult conversations where maybe they just want a leave of absence where they can just take care of one at home and maybe kind of handle it as a leave of absence. Certainly if you've put the measures in place as a company to protect those employees. That is our utmost importance right now as an employer, to protect our employees.
Right, absolutely. Great information, Dana, and this is going to be valuable to a lot of people. So we appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Dana.